Alright, thanks for tuning in to Journey to the Truth and Total Randomness. Today, we need to discuss the censorship that's going on, but not just on the internet and then YouTube. Uh, we need to talk about the censorship that's going on kind of around the world, and I want to focus on the United Kingdom, the the UK, because this is what's coming our way if we don't stand up and, you know, write our politicians and write our leaders and let them know that this is not what we want. Um, the thing that I did as an experiment, since I just started getting back into doing these kind of videos, if you've watched some of my earlier videos, you saw me doing, how-to videos on trucks and stuff like that, and how-to videos on drawing, and not even a how-to. But if you're any of my new subscribers, before that I was mainly a channel talking about world events and things going on in politics and government, and I got demonetized. The video that got me demonetized, pretty much got my channel permanently demonetized, was how I spoke about in my video about sexual predators and pedophiles and stuff around the world and in Hollywood and stuff like that. And that was like 3 years ago. So that kind of killed my motivation to even want to make videos anymore. So, but I think it's here 3 years later. Things have only gotten worse, and simply not talking about it is not helping. So we need to discuss it. We need to share the information of what's going on so that you can keep abreast of how fast this is actually moving. And one thing I did as an experiment was I've been focusing on Europe and the countries over there, and the best way to get information from those countries is to find YouTubers who make videos over there and share what's going on in that country. So as an experiment, I just started searching them out, listening to what they had to say, and subscribing to their channels. So what I want to do today is share an article from the Daily Mail. It's dailymail.co.uk, and it discusses what happened to a gentleman named Martin Sellner. And he also had a girlfriend with him named Brittany, Bettibone. See if I'm pronouncing that right. I always say Bettibone. It's Pettibone. It's not Bitty Bones or Brittlebone. It's Pettibone. And Brittany Pettibone is an American citizen. Martin Sellner is an Austrian, and they are a couple that are, if you haven't heard the phrase, they're labeled identitarians. And if you Google identitarians, good old Google will label identitarians as far right, almost basically extremists. Pretty much, BLM would label them racist. Democratic parties and groups would label them Nazis. And if you listen to their videos and stuff like I did, there's really nothing racist or crazy or extremist that they discuss in their videos. They do go around, they do give speeches and stuff, but to call it extreme is just unbelievable. So what I want to do is go talk to you about what happened to these people when they decided to get tickets to the UK to go do a speech. Okay, so let me get to this article I was telling you about earlier. The dailymail.co.uk website is where I got it from. And the title of the article is "Protesters Clash with Supporters of Austrian Leader of Far-Right Anti-Immigration Group as he vows to speak in Hyde Park." If you don't know what Hyde Park is, in the UK they have this place called the Speaker's Corner, and it's been there since 1866, and anybody who wants to speak there can speak there. And let me look up the information on this corner here, and I'll read it off to you because you need to know what this place is. Speaker's Corner is a traditional site for public speeches and debates since the mid-1800s, when protests and demonstrations took place in Hyde Park. So, Speaker's Corner is in Hyde Park. Speaker Corner is located on the northeast edge of Hyde Park, nearest Marble Arch and Oxford Street. Historic figures such as Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, and George Orwell were known to often use the area to demonstrate free speech. In 1872, an act of Parliament set aside this part of Hyde Park for public speaking. Even today, on a Sunday morning, it's not unusual to find crowds gathering at Speaker's Corner to listen to enthusiasts expounding their views. Anyone can turn up unannounced to speak on any subject as long as the police consider their speeches lawful, which I'm sure they've added that part in the last decade to the requirements to be able to speak at the park. Okay, so back to the article. Demonstrators have taken to London's Hyde Park after far-right Austrian activist Martin Sellner said he was planning to speak there on Sunday. Mr. Sellner said that security risks and left-wing threats had forced him to cancel an earlier planned event with the UK IP Youth Wing Young Independents, and it just ends like that. So he later tweeted that he would appear at Speaker's Corner in London's Hyde Park on Sunday, which was yesterday, although his anti-immigration group claimed he had been detained at the border. Well, we know that wasn't a claim, that was the truth. He and his girlfriend were detained at the airport coming into the United Kingdom. Pictures today showed demonstrators turning out on both sides as supporters of Mr. Sellner clashed with anti-fascist protesters. And then it just goes on to show a bunch of pictures. The Austrian, I shouldn't say Australian. The Austrian activist is a member of the anti-immigration group Generation Identity. And that's where you get the term identitarian. That's where that comes from. This massive immigration is changing the face of our streets, of our cities, and soon the people who have been living here for thousands of years will be endangered minority, Sellner said last year. He tweeted last Tuesday, "My speech for the Young Independence Conference was canceled for the second time due to security risks caused by left-wing threats." So that's your censorship going on right there. But we won't be silenced. On Sunday, the 11th, I will give my speech on Speaker's Corner, and I invite everybody who had a ticket for the conference to come. The Generation Identity Facebook page claimed that Mr. Sellner had been denied entry at the border. It also alleged that his girlfriend, Brittany Bettibone, a fellow right-wing activist, was not allowed to enter the country. And she wasn't allowed to enter. And the reason she was given, and she even has a document that was provided to her by the government of the United Kingdom, was because she was going to interview this gentleman named Tommy Robinson. That's just an insert from me. That's not in the article. But Home Office spokesman said the department would not comment on whether Mr. Sellner or his girlfriend had been detained, the Evening Standard reports. So as you can see, guys, the censorship has moved beyond the internet and is actually happening in the physical world. And when you have a country like the United Kingdom, I would believe you, as a U.S. citizen, would never in a million years think that you could be detained and deported from the United Kingdom for speaking your opinion, especially at a place called Speaker's Corner, where they've done it for the last almost 200 years. And they've had communists speak there, they've had Marxists speak there, they've had Like, you can go on YouTube, you can see a bunch of Muslims that speak there and speak there about Islam. They're allowed to speak there. But two white people coming from, one from America, one from Austria, to speak there about the freedom of speech, which is what their speeches were about, to how to secure the freedom of speech and stuff like that. They're not allowed to go to that country because the United Kingdom fears it's just going to create more hate and more riots and stuff like that in their country. I I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this is it's not to be unexpected. This is simply something that was predicted in 1949 in the book 1984 by George Orwell. I'll be honest, I never read the book from George Orwell 1984. I've read enough about it though to know like terms 101 and 2 plus 2 equals 5 and Big Brother are all terms that originate from this book. Now, this book was written in 1949, and it discusses the inevitable outcome of, capitalism to socialism to communism and stuff like that. And it's just unbelievable. I never thought in my lifetime I would witness this occurring in westernized countries. I mean, we're supposed to be beyond that, but the fact that a gentleman wrote about it in 1949, it just tells you everything you need to know. Civilization has been around long enough that educated people have witnessed it, experienced it, and lived it enough to write it down. It's not like he came up with all these ideas off the top of his head. He wasn't some psychic or, how can I say, Nostradamus or anything like that. He was just basically referencing material via experience and what he learned when he was growing up about the history of civilizations before him. And it makes me wonder. It's like, are we beating a dead horse here? I mean, even if we fight it, I think it's still going to come. No matter what. That is what history does. It repeats itself. People forget. So the same things happen over and over again. And eventually it leads to war. We fight for our freedom, get our freedom back. Then it starts all over again. It's like a multi-generational sacrifice that has to be done every so many decades in order to keep freedom alive. And I don't know. I mean, never in a million years would I thought in my lifetime would have thought that you would be banned from the UK for a speech that you haven't even given yet. I mean, an anticipated speech. These people went to the UK, got off a plane, they were immediately arrested, then they were detained for like 2.5 to 3 days, and then they were sent back on a plane to where they came from, just to prevent a speech that they don't even really know what was in that speech to begin with. Doesn't that kind of remind you of Minority Report? You ever watch that movie? That is just scary. And the irony of this, the fact that people like Lenin and Karl Marx and George Orwell spoke at the Speaker's Corner, pretty much everything they talked about is what's happening in the UK right now. And these guys were 50, 70 years ahead of their time. They weren't, like I said, they weren't like they weren't going off premonitions, or they weren't fortune tellers or anything like that. All they did was they researched the past, they realized there's a cycle, and this is what's happening right now. But it's not how they thought it would happen. They didn't think it was going to be due to mass migration of Islam pouring into their countries. And I think this identitarians, what they're trying to do is save their culture. They want to keep freedom of speech alive. They want people to have the right to live their life the way they want to without fearing death or prosecution or persecution. And they don't want to live in fear. You know what I mean? Because you have all these immigrants coming from all these other countries, supposedly as refugees, women and children. But we know that's not the fact. We know that most of the people that are coming in as refugees are men that are young, able. I mean, they're of fighting age. They're not committed to their countries. They're not willing to fight for their country because they don't care about their country. So why should they care about the country they're coming to? All these hardworking people that were in these countries that were paying their taxes, going out working every day, so that they could have social benefits, like social security and stuff like we have here in the U.S. All this money is just be giving to these refugees and these immigrants. And it's not only money, they're being given houses, they are really being given cars, they're being given monthly stipends to live, and they're taking over these small towns, they're taking over small sections of cities, they're creating these no-go zones where people who are actual citizens of the country can't even go and be safe. And there's one reporter, a video I watched. Her name was Francisca. Oh, if I could remember her last name. It's Seller. Seller, I think is her last name. Pariselllar. I believe that's how it's pronounced. So look up that video on YouTube from Francisca Seller, how they actually went into one of these areas that was like a no-go zone, and she's giving a report, and then they all come under attack from these Muslim immigrants. Because they're big and tough. They like to gang up 5-10 deep on a female reporter and one cameraman. And it's downright frightening when you listen to her screams. I can't understand her language, but I mean she's screaming for help because they're dragging her down the street. They're beating the crap out of the cameraman. And this ain't even the first instance. This has been happening all over. And if you've been keeping up with the politics over in Europe, this is why Italy just had a massive vote for the Republican Party. And they put a Republican government in control now. Because they're fed up with all the mass immigration that these Democrats are letting just pour into their country, taking their jobs, taking their benefits, and basically just destroying their infrastructure and their country. Because the left doesn't care about the people that already live here and who built their countries. They want to replace the population. They want to do wealth distribution by redistributing populations. And I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. But that is what's going on over in Europe. And that's just the UK. I don't want to get into other things. I think I'll save that for other videos. But we need to get this information out. You need to learn about it. I think in the description I'll try to provide links to Martin Sellner and Brittany Bettibone's YouTube pages, and also Tommy Robinson's YouTube pages, because you really got to listen and hear what these guys are saying. They are telling you what is going on in their countries right now. And that is what I see happening here in the U.S. We're kind of like in the beginning stages of it. But there's definitely, and I'll have to give, a pat on the back to the left, the Democrats, for this, because this is what they were doing. They've become organized worldwide, and they are really pushing these policies and this, how can I say it, left-wing agenda in all the countries, all the Western countries, simultaneously. They're stirring up racial tensions. Uh, they just want to open the borders, let anybody in. They'll let terrorists. Think about that. The UK has let terrorists into their country that they knew were terrorists. They've let terrorists into their country that they knew were on TV shows, freaking TV shows, and these people were talking about how they wanted to kill Westerners. And these people came to the UK. Their border patrol didn't stop them. Their security didn't stop them. They let them come into the UK. And they knew they were terrorists. They knew they wanted to kill people. And they let them in. But when it comes to an American and an Australian that want to talk about free speech in the UK, they detain them for fucking 3 days. And then they deport their asses. Isn't that something? So that is what's going to happen if we ignore it. This is what will happen if you just go to your job every day, work, take care of your kids, and watch TV and movies. You gotta start getting involved in stuff, and you gotta start spreading the word, or it's gonna come to us, and it's gonna eventually affect you. It's not one of these things that's just gonna stay in one part of the world. It's already happening in Canada, and like I said, the other Western countries, and it's already happening here in the U.S. So that is my little sharing of information today. Leave your thoughts and comments below. And sorry, I kind of put this together like at the last minute, and I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I'm busy doing other stuff, but I try to stay on top of it so that I can share this information. I do get on my local radio station and I share this information too, even though they think I'm crazy. But hey, you got to get it out there. You know, people got to start looking into this stuff for themselves. So thanks for listening, and I will see you later.